Hey everyone, and welcome back to Episode Club. Today we're going through a different sort of format. As we have to catch up, we need to do more and more different varieties of Episode Club. So today we're doing podcast style, and joining me today, as always, is Johnny B. Crazy, aka Johnny, aka so many other names. But with that, I will pass it off to him to talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
No. Thank you for having me on, Sasa. It's always a pleasure. This is a really good episode. The Hound Scared by Fire. Jamie, we get to really see the story behind his pain, hear the real story of what happened to the Mad King. We get Roose Bolton and those beady eyes. He's just scary in general. And there's a few other things in here. Kyburn gets to show off his skill. Um, and Rob, mm, just Rob. I don't know what to say right now besides Rob. But no, everyone hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to share it out with your friends. Thank you. And leave a comment below as we get started in here. And let us know if you wanted to do a premiere or not.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
Yeah.
Sorry for
So
taking over the show.
no, it's okay. Well, we kind of share episode club. Um, the first scene we can most definitely talk about is Beric, Thoros, and the Brotherhood Without Banners. And with this, Arya um, is watching this trial by combat, which is going on, and it's the Hound and Beric that ultimately fight. Um, but Beric is the one that dies in this, but then he comes back to life. So, what did you first think about when this entire sequence here as I pull up some more pictures?
Well, I mean, one awesome badass. I was wondering from the beginning when I first saw this, because I think I kind of started in season 3 and I picked up the books around the endish. So I was wondering how Thoros is even going to come close to beating the Hound, but that fire, and we see how scared and afraid he is of fire, but he did overcome it in that, and the Red God was on his side in this point, much to Arya's chagrin. She was very upset about the butcher's boy, and rightfully so. So it was just a really fun fight scene, and you got there the blood magic that he used to light the sword on fire. It makes you wonder if John will be able to use that as well in season 8. I feel like someone else will be able to use it. Maybe, just maybe, his sword will burn blue instead of red fire because of his blood. And that's just my tinfoil throw out there. What do you think?
Yeah, when this fight sequence goes on, it comes off pretty much the last episode that we were talking about, which was Now His Watch Has Ended, where this has been set up. And to watch this go down, especially with we know that the Hound is pretty much deathly afraid of fire, and he's going against a person who supports the Red God, which is a fire god. It's kind of a funny thing to watch his reaction, especially like in this picture where he sees Beric using fire and swordplay against him. And when I first initially saw this scene, I was like, this is pretty cool. Especially because even though I don't personally know fight choreography, the fact that it's in a small space, they're using um, two people with one with a flaming sword and a bunch of fire. Uh, it's it was well done for what it is and what it does.
Wasn't too fancy, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was raw and dirty like it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And it really, in this setup, Arya really wants the Hound to die. Um, Now that we know that obviously he doesn't die, and throughout this entire series, she becomes, or season, sorry, she becomes really close to the Hound. It's kind of funny to watch her want to have him dead. But when Barrett comes back to life, you're just kind of like, whoa, because you don't obviously expect it because that backstory hasn't been brought up and foretold yet. So it's
Yeah,
awesome.
and with that, he comes back, and this is his sixth time coming back, and we know
Mhm.
later the seventh time him dying, and the seventh god being the stranger. It goes back into play whether all these gods are the same, and just branched off from one, uh, which may be the case. If any god's tangible and real, it has to be R'hllor, but I believe it may tie more into magic. We're not going to get this definitive answer, I don't believe. If we do, it'll be shite. Um, and Arya here, the heartbreak. Can you bring back a man without a head just once?
Mhm.
I mean, you can really see it. The acting chops on Macy Williams here is just fantastic. The recasting of Beric Dondarrion was spot on, and everything conveyed here. Not to mention afterwards, we get the Arya Gendry shippers just being really happy. So
Yeah, because we kind of end the opening scene with Beric coming back, and if we jump back to Beric and all of them, it's Arya really talking about what it means to these men to necessarily be a part of this, uh, like this brotherhood, because she doesn't know exactly what's going on, and the fact that when she questions Thoros about how a man can be brought back who hasn't been beheaded, but a man who can't like come back. It shows her slight innocence, but it also shows that she has a belief maybe in something. And it's a sweet scene because although by the looks of them, Thoros and Beric are probably really creepy, in actual reality, they're taking care of her as best as she can, especially because she is Lord Eddard Stark's daughter. Um, which is just kind of cool that she, because I kind of forgot that she actually really hangs out with these men for such a long time. Um,
and it's really good for her. I'd like to throw in because she's had life hit her in the face. She hasn't had any different. She hasn't had okay. She had. I'd like to throw in here that Arya hasn't had any life that's different than anyone else. She's had a hard life, but she hasn't had to realize. Ah, hold on. Arya's had uh, a hard time coming to the realization of what the true world really is. And I apologize for stumbling over my words there, but she really has. Everything's been done to her, but she still doesn't understand how the world works. For instance, the way she gets mad about Thoros and Beric for them basically gonna ransom her. They don't really have a choice in this. If they are to continue the fight, they need gold, they need weapons, so they don't really have a choice in this. It's gonna cost money and possibly their lives to protect her, and it's just a side note. Like Beric said, it's just kind of the cost of doing business. They don't really feel that way toward her, but she doesn't understand this, and it, it really gets to her, and I feel for her in this moment.
yeah, like she's still at this stage in her life where she has to be very self um, reliant almost because of who she is and what she's doing. But she also has to gain back whatever she wants, which is her family. And to have a group of men who have technically no allegiance but to each other, to save her and to bring her back kind of shows us that she kind of moves away from what is traditionally Westerosi. Like, yes, all of these men are pretty much from Westeros, aside from Thoros, and but it's a
Yeah.
different sect of what could be. So it's kind of exploring what her character kind of goes through in the later seasons with knowing about a different part of society, pretty much, even if it is across the narrow sea, which is kind of cool.
No, that's a good point because she's immersed in this Bravosi and culture from across the narrow sea, not just Bravosi. Uh, and she's kind of thrust into these ways of thinking without even having a chance to think otherwise. She never really prayed. She never really went to the God's wood too much. And this is the tangible reality she's seen. And it's very funny when we get the story from Thoros. You know, he was sent over here to convert Robert Baratheon, failed miserably. So he's just a drunk at this point. And he has the power of resurrection. The failed priest, you know, the sinner having the most power. And I think it's a true sinner, right? He owns what he's done. He owns that he is a sinner, unlike Melisandre,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't even think this really possible, and also seems to have a little more ruthless demeanor about her. She doesn't let anything get in the way of her God, whereas Thoros sees humanity more for what it really is. Yes, he believes in his God, but he knows trying to push a religion on people isn't necessarily the best way. Even after he's bringing Beric back, he's not like fervently preaching about it. You know, people are just following him because of it. And I think that's really poetic and fantastically done by George.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Go ahead.
Yeah, my one final kind of thing on just the just more of the Brotherhood of the Outbidders in general is that when uh, Thoros is saying all this stuff, it's affirming um, that there's a different religion that's not the Seven, that's not um, the old guns and the new guns. It's a completely different religion from across the Narrow Sea that we have yet to really learn a lot about. There's Mel has only been the one POV-ish, I guess you would say, character that sort of spreads what the lore is. So the fact that we have Thoros who can also have a bounce off point is kind of cool. But the poor Valor didn't save him when Thoros needed it most. Mm-hmm.
No, that's a really good point. Um, and, you know, you have to think that I feel like the red god represents dragons and their magic. And I feel like the old gods represent warging and the magic of the north, and the others and the children of the forest. Like it's the two dichotomy, it's the ice and fire, which I think it's going to play more into us finding out that the Night King has more of a backstory. I hope, at least in season 8. I know in the books we don't have a Night King per se. We have the others, and we'll get more of a backstory about them. We know they're not a clear cut and dry villain. There's something more there that I think is awesome to look into. And we can talk about Arya and Gendry, and Arya not like I'm your family, which I think could be foreshadowing. I don't know that they will be together. I do see that Arya, like I believe you said that Gendry and Sansa could be together, but I do see them being family from this somehow. And it only makes sense to marry them in. But I just don't feel like Arya's going to go for it. Plus, I think she's going to have to become a faceless man um, or pay
Mm-hmm.
for it because she has to pay for what the magic she's used. There's a price for that, as we've seen throughout the series. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like when Gendry says that they will be family, and he says that you won't be just my family, but you'll be my lady, meaning that he may not necessarily marry her, but he will probably be within the household of the Starks or whatever would become of the Starks at the end, because the only person to be in the Stark to carry kind of the Stark line is Sansa. Also because at this point we have to assume that yeah, Arya, she's like what? She was 12 in the first season. No, she was like 11 or something in the first season. Now she's probably about 13, maybe 14.
I mean, it
Gendry,
could have happened if they would have did something with it in season 7, right? I think.
if they had, like, they could have probably done a scene where, like, something could have happened, or there could have been a note that was sent from, like, they could have used an extra note that John had maybe sent to Winterfell saying that he was doing this, the stupid mission that he goes on, um, to get the white and say that who's with him. So maybe to stir up some sort of association with her. Um, but I don't know. I
Yeah, I
don't.
would have liked if she would have got to King's Landing, found him in the shop, but then that's when she got turned around. Maybe he had heard about the brother instead of Hot Pie. I think that could have worked out. I think I don't know. I'm not going to put it past them to put Arya and Gendry together, but they would have to do a lot of working around to get there.
Yeah,
But
they'd have to probably start planting the seeds like in the first episode for this, like even more. Like they'd have to like water it and water it and water it to get it to grow. Um, because the last time that we see Gendry is when they're at the wall. So he could be one of those people that comes with Tormund and Beric about what happened at Eastwatch. So and is one of the survivors because I don't think they would bring Gendry back just to kill him. Um,
no, they have to have a Baratheon survive. And I do think he'll get Storm's in, but I feel like there's the politics will be left up in the air, but we can get into that completely different podcast.
mm,
Um, yeah, I just hate that in season 7 he didn't get to use that Warhammer except on the fermented crab eating gold cloaks. You
yeah.
know, if what else we have there? That's about it there, right?
That's that's it in terms of Arya and the Brotherhood Without Banners. If we want to stick in the Riverlands, we have Jamie and Brienne next.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that. Well, Jamie comes into Harrenhal with his hand around his neck, right? And he is battered and beaten. He's pretty much on the edge of death. His wound that we find out later, uh, good old Maester Ky, well, not Maester, but Qyburn gets a hold of that hand and stymies the corruption. You know, he was going to take it off because it was already infected, and you can tell. And I believe Jamie has that fever dream in the books, which comes back into this if I'm not mistaken. But he is gaunt. He is drawn out. This is really well played, and you can tell that Roose Bolton has something up his sleeve here. You can see it in those eyes, and we have Brienne and Jamie in the bath, and Jamie just tells her everything about what happened to Ares. And this is when you start to really feel for Jamie because you find out what happened. His father wanted the head of the king. The king wanted the head of his father. The father wanted to be in power. The king wanted to burn everyone alive. No matter what you do, you're breaking an oath. And he makes a really good point here. And the fact that it's being the point is being given to Brienne speaks volumes because of how knightly and how honor bound she is. And he sees that that is a slight weakness in her because she views life slightly through rose-colored glasses of chivalry. And here is where she starts to learn really what life truly is. Uh, she's slightly been sheltered her entire life, just a little bit. I mean, on Tarth, but she's finally got a taste of real, just how nasty human beings can be, especially during times of war. And Jamie, I think, really cares for her. You know, he sees something in her he wishes he could be, I believe. And we get the whole spiel, Kingslayer. But I'll let you talk, some. I've been talking forever.
Yeah. When Jamie and Brienne arrive with Locke at Harrenhal, there is that uh, thing where Bruce kind of plays with Jamie for like a second. He's like, "Oh yeah, there was this had happened, and your sister is alive and well." Like he plays with Jamie and that because it's like the most well-known secret about Jamie and Cersei's relationship, even though it's not 100% confirmed. So it's
It
kind of
seems to have got out a lot faster since what happened with Bran. It seems more people are talking about it.
mm-hmm,
But maybe that's just us and seeing it progress throughout the show. But it's pretty cool to see how the rumors spread. I do.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like when he's playing with him, his just face just like drops. And then when he finds out that she's fine, it's just like a whole thing of like, oh, thank God. Um, because the twin bond and all of that stuff. And where Jamie has like pretty much no fear in terms of when he comes to see Bran, because Bran's just like washing herself, and then he's just like just strips it all off and just doesn't care. He metaphorically strips himself, but also physically um, strips what remains of himself away in this scene, where he talks about pretty much the moments leading up to the technical assassination of King Ares um, by himself, and how he killed the pyromancer and then he killed King Ares while Ares was talking about burning them all and using wildfire. And in this, he's just really opened up to her, which I don't think a lot of people have ever really gotten this deep with him so quickly. Probably no one has. So to have this vulnerable moment with someone you kind of sort of know is really remarkable. And that when he says to alert people when I passed out, she says that the Kingslayer has like help the Kingslayer, and he says, "My name is Jamie." So he really wants to cement himself with his own name and not being the Kingslayer, because he's kind of sort of lost that in
Well, he
the
hid
removal of his.
behind that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's just saying that it's just he kind of like loses that once the Kingslayer kind of persona, kind of once he loses his sword hand.
That was a great point. He was stripped down bare and naked. Uh, and right, he hid behind his hand. He hid behind that armor, that golden armor that he wore. He hid behind being the Kingslayer. He embraced it because he figured he couldn't change it. Who cares? Uh, and ah, yeah, this is the epitome of him, hitting rock bottom and getting ready for a full rebirth. That's a great point. I don't know what more could be
Yeah,
said about this. We are
we're flying through.
kicking ass.
Um, so if we're finished with this, we can talk about Robb Stark and
Tommen died.
his men. So let me just go hit that.
Yeah, I'll set it up with
Okay.
freaking Tommen. He's making records, dying twice as two different characters in a major TV series that's not a soap opera. Uh, what was it? Martin and Willem Lannister, right? If I'm not mistaken, the Karstarks get their revenge. Rickard Karstark. I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Was I think this is more fitting. Was Rob right in what he did? Should he have either let it go on unpunished or handled it differently? Or do you think he was
Um,
boxed in a corner, basically? Or put in a boxed in a
he,
corner? Kind of euphemisms am I making up?
he was that. Well, he was kind of. put in a corner, but he also had to show what he was a king and what a king is made of in this, and for the fact that he had one of his liege lords and one of the people that supports him decides that these kids don't die in war, that they're just going to wake up in the middle of the night and get murdered. uh, it's kind of a thing that you have to deal with, because if, for sake of argument, he had let it go, there potentially could be more discourse, like, and see what else can I get away with in this, and um, who else can we kill off until we reach his breaking point, maybe, is an avenue um, that they go down. But Karstark really tries to push it on the fact that this was also Catelyn's decision, and this is Catelyn also, like, in a sense, forced him to do it, in terms of not dealing with Jaime when he needed to, and not dealing with the Lannisters when they had the opportunity to. So it's pushing the blame slightly, but I feel like Rob in this, because after it is the execution of Rickard Karstark, and he gets that line in before he dies, and it says, uh, "Kill me and be cursed." So we know what happens after that, though.
Yeah, I mean, and it's technically Kat's fault, but Rob should have kept her under lock and key, especially afterwards. She's sitting in here, Talissa's by his side, rubbing it in. I would argue that they should have took Karstark prisoner. That way you had some advantage over the Karstarks, and then sent him to the wall afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rob and that wolf's blood of his got to him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He realized his fault with being so lenient with his mother when she committed vile treason. Now, she didn't kill two kids, and I'm not uh, condoning what Rickard Karstark did, but he should have held him hostage. That way, he wouldn't have lost his army, for one. And right here, you have as well Talissa everywhere over his side. He's making battle plans. She's over his shoulder at every single turn. And I don't think it's just love. You want to show them in love, but Rob is literally rubbing their face in this. And you have Frey's soldiers there as well. You have to remember this. And he's just gallivanting around with them. This is really just him chalking it up to him being young. And, Kat does try to give good advice, but, how's he going to listen to her with everything she's done? Um, it's a tough thing. At least he did swing the sword, but he is a kinslayer, like you said. And, this may have killed him because he decides to take Casterly Rock, right?
Yeah, after
Oh,
the
go ahead.
after the beheading is when they have the next battle strategy. But yeah, the the two women that Rob has in his life both are manipulative and both have their own games that they want to play.
She may be innocent, but she is just very suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's just Catelyn just sitting and acting like nothing's happened. But when Rob the next day orders the execution of Karstark, it's raining, which is kind of funny because they're in the Riverlands and everybody's pretty much watching this happen. And when he asks Karstark to have any last words, it's like, "You are no king of mine. Kill me and be cursed." So could that be because of the downfall? Because at this point, we only have 4 episodes until the Red Wedding, so which conceivably is maybe a few months. Um,
Um,
so,
yeah, you had nothing as accursed as the King Kinslayer. Then he's killed under the roof after being given salt and fish. Is that it?
fish, I think,
And
or bread and salt.
bread and salt. I think it's bread and salt. Uh, and I do believe it's definite foreshadowing, super foreshadowing. But this is the peak of, I think, Rob's. I say madness, but I don't mean it as a literal madness. But his own personal tragedy is at a peak right here.
Mhm.
I mean, he doesn't want to do this, but he feels like he has to. He's
Mhm.
still, I think he might be 15 now, 14, 15 years old. He's trying to,
In in the book. Yeah.
yeah, he's trying to look strong. And, this, he's not thinking it through. He's not thinking of the slight he's rubbing in Waterfrey's face. I mean, I know they've heard of it. He has to know they've heard of it. He's just not thinking with anything except his head.
Mhm.
um, and that's really what you can chalk this up to.
Yeah, and after they,
And being young.
yeah, and after the execution, they have the whole meeting of how they have to proceed next, and Talissa can't find Winterfell on the map, even though she can read, which is kind of funny, and uh, and it's really funny because he knows that they now have to go to, so they have to go a bit more, what is it, east, so then they can go all the way west to Casterly Rock. um, and you wouldn't think that Tywin already would have had scouts at this point to figure out if this strategy had moved forward past episode 9, um, how where they would have been to have that next murder if Walder Frey hadn't been in cahoots, you could say, with Tywin and
I,
Roosevelt.
I do think Tywin would let him take it a lot like Cersei did, but it is much up to speculation. I think he had a decent plan, but I feel like just a little bit too little too late, and you can see his distraction right by his side.
Mm-hmm.
And she's always, always there, not even really whispering in his ear, but just there. She kind of did give him the inspiration to take their home away, uh, which is a good thought, but I mean, he just thinks Walter Frey's gonna give him up, doesn't he? Has he? No, didn't he already ask Edmure to do that, or is that
No,
later?
I think it's
Okay.
in the next episode or so that this happens. Because he said, I think it was in the last episode, they were talking, no, episode 3, I think they were talking about like what Edmure had done to make them lose sections of the army. That's what it is. I think it's not until a few more episodes from now, maybe episode 7, that they make that deal. Um, or maybe next episode. I can't remember, but it's coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he's marching to his own death. I mean, that's basically what we have here. It's
Yeah,
hard to, not
there you go.
much else to sum up, I don't think. I
Yeah.
mean, there's, whether she's a spy or not doesn't matter. She is a suspicious character, though.
So I think, yeah, yeah, I think she's still a suspicious character because of how she came into the story. But we're kind of finished with the Riverland stuff. Um, so if you want, we can go to Beyond the Wall, or we can go to King's Landing.
Uh, hmm. I guess let's go to King's Landing. Maybe
So,
beyond the wall for the.
well, I guess because the first scene Beyond the Wall is Baelish and Cersei. Um,
Oh,
Scroll up here. So we see Baelish walking through some part of the Red Keep, and he spies this woman. And yeah, they talk about how um, Baelish must work with the Tyrells and how that they have a better relationship. and that he must do better than his task of finding Arya. Um, what did you think of this?
Yeah, we get to see some inner workings of how Peter Baelish works here. And, he's Cersei, he's going to do what Cersei says, especially when his life's at stake. He's going to play everyone at every point, which I love. I do like him as a villain, even though his accent sometimes can get on my nerves. But I do have fun talking like him, though. Loras, we kind of see Loras, and this is where we see Littlefinger's subterfuge. He has Oliver going after Loras, and he basically just rats on him. I mean, Loras is a very easy get. It didn't take much but one pickup line from Oliver, and he had him. Given Oliver is a professional, so he's good at his craft. But I mean, right there, he finds out everything. Throughout this, we're seeing Sansa talking to Marjorie too, right? And getting these hopes and dreams planted in her head just to get crushed again. I really hated that.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's really kind of weird to watch all of this go down, especially what we know, and the fact that Baelish is playing games, and we find out at the end of the episode what Tywin has planned for Sansa is kind of fun-ish to watch. But yeah, the whole reaffirming that Loras is gay because of what happens at the end of the episode, and Sansa and Marjorie really developing that sort of weird girlfriend, friend, sister relationship. It's kind of funny, but Baelish, man, he's always up to his schemes and all of that. And
Well, see, Marjorie and Olenna are up to these same schemes, but
mm-hmm.
they do it prettier. They look better while doing it. They have more grace while they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about it. Because Marjorie doesn't give two fragging hells about Sansa, really. I think maybe they see her as an innocent person, but she's the key to the North, like everyone says.
The key in the pocket, yeah. And it's kind of funny how she kind of slightly idolizes her, which kind of goes into the Baelish and Sansa scenes where Baelish is like, "You're wearing your hair just like Marjorie does," and she's like, "A lot of people wear my hair like this," which is a contention for all of the seasons with Sansa and her hair, because they have
The
talked.
look he gives her, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The look he gives her is just like got these dead eyes at her while she's talking about, oh, I'm not going to be going on the ship with you. And he's like throwing these hints at her. Oh, you wear your hair just like Marjorie's. He's throwing hints at her that he knows exactly what's going on, but she's not picking up on it. That's what I really love about this, because I think he's trying to throw hints to see how smart she is and how much he can manipulate her. And it's funny because this really comes back to bite him in the ass. Uh, and there still are some theories that Littlefinger isn't dead. And I'll say 95%. I'm sure he's dead, but you never know. Uh, I just really enjoy how he he plays her like a fiddle right here, and knowing that she's not going to get what she wants, but he doesn't tell her. But then he says he still has her best interest at heart. And we know that's not the case. We're sitting here screaming at the TV. That's what I love about it. And just thankfully, Sansa gets her revenge is all I really have to say much more about this part.
Yeah. And just the one thing too about her hair is that there was, I think, an article, I'll probably put it in the description, about Sansa talking about her hair, and it's how her hair and her personality has been influenced by the people that she's been around. Whether it was Cersei when it was in the beginning, um, to now in season 3, Marjorie, to later on when she becomes Dark Sansa and has that whole um, change of her look, her sort of that time period where she has her metaphorical death of herself to then be resurrected back into Lady of Winterfell. And now, based off of promo material, we see her have this more back to her more northern inspired look, which, if you compare it to the way that Lyanna wears her hair during the wedding in the flashback, it's pretty much exactly like that, with just extra braids involved.
Oh, that's a really good point because she is almost like a chameleon. She tends to blend in wherever she is, and it's kind of one of her strengths. To be able to blend in and kind of not be noticed. There's a lot of points in the books where she's using this to her advantage. She's acting like on the outside that she's dumb, but she really is uh, taking in more than she's letting on, just as we hear later from Tyrion or from John. And uh, that's kind of what I love about Sansa's character is her adaptability, and that's the only reason one of the few reasons she can survive. And it harkens back to her and her sister being so much alike
Mm-hmm.
and complete opposites at the same time. Neither one of them could have survived the other situation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things where just like the comparison of if you had made one other choice and it changed your life, how would it have done? Yeah. Um, so the next King's Landing scene that we can talk about is Tyrion and Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns. So we see these two talk about figs, finances, and much, much more. So,
She basically, I'll sum it up short and sweet. She schools Tyrion in math class, straight up, and then you will pay for half of this wedding. The Tyrells are not putting all all of this. You have to love her. She's a ruthless negotiator, and she hasn't lived this long for no reason. Uh, she has such a wealth of knowledge. She's one of the main people I would love to just talk to if this person was real.
mm-hmm,
And uh, honestly, Tyrion's face says it all. He's just kind of sitting there dumbfounded after, he doesn't really have the words. He's trying, but he's getting outmatched completely.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like going up against the Queen of Thorns, you will ultimately lose. Um, and it's funny how she like makes quips at Podrick when he's not fast enough to bring her the figs. She's like, "Where did you go for these, Volantis?" Um, like she's not only just quipping with Tyrion, but she's quipping with any person that's in her presence, which is funny. And I think I got a funny screenshot with her eating a fig.
Gotta stay regular.
Yeah, gotta say it regular. But yeah, Olenna and her funny quips. Um, she's probably one of the best women slash also grandmothers in the show because we haven't really explored really any grandparent age people besides like Tywin in the show. But Tywin more or less commends himself as just a father, not necessarily more as a grandfather type figure in this.
Yeah, she's a mother hen, and I think she tends to somewhat care about her. Even her ladies in waiting that she had going looking for. Was this in a? I don't know if this is a future episode, but
It's a
this is
future.
an example
Mhm.
that she actually cares for them. She gave whoever finds the best one the second best one, without getting into too much detail. She she cares enough, and she knows that you have to show a little bit of empathy. You have to show that you have a little bit of heart, even if you don't. That you have to show it for appearances, that people will love you more for it than being just a stern asshole. She has that perfect mix of sweet and salty. I mean, it's just perfect. She can be sharp and sour when she wants to be. And when she's sweet, it's a blessing, and you love her for it because you've just been getting so much salt. Tywin he never stops being salty, and he just keeps rubbing salt in the wound. So she has this perfect way about her. Had she been born or married into a different house, she probably would have been queen if she could have if she was anywhere close to King's Landing at the time, or you know, the higher houses. But back then, it was Targaryen's a little harder to get into.
Yeah,
But she
because
has Marjorie right in the spot now.
yeah, because I think she was like before her she was married into the Tyrell. She was Olenna Redwine, which is a minor house in the not a minor house, but like a house in the Reach. So she did climb, and her granddaughter climbed. So it would have been funny to see if Marjorie and Tom had had a child, how far her great grandchild would have climbed. Um, but that's just another thought for the fanfic writers out there. Um, yeah, Olenna, awesome lady, and I'm sad that
It
she.
does seem like all the men in that family are dumb, though.
Yeah, Mace Tyrell. Um,
You can't even say except for anyone. Like
except
Loris
for
isn't
no,
really that smart.
no, he's like as Olenna once says, he's just good at knocking men off horses. Um, the next scene in
Oh, it's a doozy for
King's,
you. You get to marry Tyrion, right?
yeah, yeah. So the next scene in this is Tyrion treating with the children, and they talk about what's happened with Olenna and basically what's next, and that the Tyrells um, are going to do what they have to do for the wedding, and that pretty much the that these two are getting married. So wedding bells abound, not only with Joffrey and Marjorie, but Tyrion and Sansa, and Loras and Cersei. So, what did you think when you saw the fact that these new marriage alliances had come to pass?
First off, the reason Olenna is at a disadvantage is because Tywin, Cersei, Littlefinger, Varys, they own everything King's Landing. Uh, Even if Olenna had all her spies there, I don't know if it would be enough to cover that amount of spies. So she's at a disadvantage there. And uh, they tried to act quick, but it wasn't quick enough. And Tywin found out, so he's laying down the law to the kids. They do not like it. Oh man, Tyrion's face in this one just mouth open, guffawed, just no, you can't. How are you? You know, he even points out, why are you going to keep torturing Sansa? She already had to deal with Joffrey. Now you're going to give her to me. It's just cruel. I mean, because he knows he's not really capable of loving her like he should. He loves Shay, and he actually thinks highly of women and highly of people in general. Like he tries to give people their due before he judges them. And then Cersei gets this bombshell that she's got to marry Loras, and she goes back to being a little girl. No, father, please, not again. You never. This is the only time you will ever see Cersei like this, and it is just fantastic by Lena Headey. Portrays so much emotion and takes you right back to when she got the news she had to marry Robert Baratheon instead of Rhaegar. And ooh, just very good. That kind of gave me chills thinking about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, like Tyrion, he's just kind of like, well, I have to do what I have to do because I am uh, technically, by all intents and purposes, the heir to Casterly Rock, even though Jaime is Tywin's heir, is what he says. Um, and the fact that they have to take the North and the Reach by this process is kind of Tyrion just like, oh, why? Especially because of the, I guess you could say, significant age difference that's between the two, and the fact that he doesn't want to put her under more torture and more, I guess you'd say, imprisonment than she already has. And yes, when when Tywin goes, you, stop laughing, because you're gonna have to marry Marjorie's brother, Laura Tyrell. Yeah, it's the first time that she's really in a weakened state, and she's really almost lashing out against Tywin, because she hasn't really done that. She's used face while doing it. Um, yeah, I can imagine that it's a similar scene to when she was told that, yeah, you're gonna have to marry Robert Baratheon, because I think she was like maybe 12, when she was told that she wasn't gonna marry Rhaegar. Um, so it's kind of funny to watch her go through this, and Tywin, my children, when he walks away, because he's told them what they have to do next, and they're not happy about it, but they have to do it. And in about 2 episodes, I believe, is when Sansa and Tyrion get married. So we'll talk about that more, when it happens. But yeah, Marjorie, Cersei gets a sliding pass on her marriage.
Yeah, Tyrion kind of brings up his wedding to Tasha too.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Did it drop?
yeah.
Sorry. And he brings up the whole wedding with Tasha and how it didn't go well for me as well. And hopefully I didn't stop again, but I probably did. But it's both children are devastated here. Tyrion for what he has to do, and then this puts more complications on Shay because, yeah, it's it's almost a loss for words, just like the children. I mean, Tywin, tough love isn't the word for it.
Yeah, tough love. Um, so that's, I think, all of the King's Landing scenes. So do we want to talk about Jon and Ygritte, Stannis, Selyse, and Shireen, or Dany?
Hmm. Well, we can talk about Stannis, Salish, and Shireen really quick. There's a little bit there, but I think it's more how fervent a believer Salish is. Stannis is the greatest man and best man she's ever known. So I don't know what type of men she's known, but I know they did burn. Didn't they? Did they burn her father on the
I think it
pyre,
was her brother.
or was it brother? Uh, so she is lost in this. Stannis is Azor Ahai. They don't say it in so many words, but if you know the backstory of what's going on, she is lost in this. She's a fervent believer in her king. This is why she's gives two shits about Melisandre sleeping with him. She sees it as a blessing from the god, from the red god. She has this, and we kind of see why she's insane. Now, why she kept the babies ever to begin with, the stillborns, and that maybe she was a little crazy already. But this will drive you further into madness. It seems like this is the room she stays in a lot, and she talks to them. And all she wants is to give Stannis an heir, and she can't do that. And she curses Shireen almost, uh, and sees her as an abomination, which is horrid. Um, she talks about the shadow baby as if it was a real male heir almost. It's very odd. I don't know if she knows exactly what really happened. Um, and she's just lost in this religious fervor, and we see that Shireen is getting punished for it. And she's been getting punished all her life, as well as, Davos is down there right now, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But she's stuck there singing her creepy songs because they don't have patch face. So I know. So we get the little hint there, and maybe she is. It's a little hint toward the Long Night or the Weir realm, the weird net, the little the place where Bran got touched. Shout out to J.R. Rowley. Uh, we've been all kind of around this. I think something with Bran's gonna happen in there, and maybe this song and what Patchface is talking about leads into that kind of a battle inside the Weirwood net would be really awesome. And that's what I got to say about the song. I don't think it has anything to pertain to the scene necessarily. I think all of this is just really beautiful, especially her um, visiting Davos. But I'll let you talk for a second.
Yeah, like Celise and Stannis, they really show just how weird their relationship is. Like, um, she's just creepy and a little crazy because we kind of got that acknowledgement from Melisandre about who Celise is, but to see that she keeps the children that she had, her sons, in like weird glass jars, things that are like a scientist lab, is kind of like the weirdest thing, uh, because we haven't really dealt with someone who's crazy in that manner. Um, but hey, gotta give one character some creepy flaw like that. And Stannis, when he talks about Shireen and how the fact that she is like who she is, and when he talks to Shireen and just kind of gets to be a father for a moment in time, but he says, don't play with, like, don't talk to Davos, like, pretty much act like Davos doesn't exist. It sparks that whole thing, like, in children and in people, of like, the more you say don't do something, the more they want to do it. And she goes to meet with Davos, and it's kind of a funny situation because she brings him a book, because one of the guards is asleep and Davos doesn't know how to read. Um, and she immediately picks up on this and she goes, "This is Aegon." And she starts to do like alphabet, like enunciations with him. And it's just a really sweet scene that happens in this moment of just all of this craziness that happens in this episode.
It really is. I think this kind of shows Davos's character, Salisa's character. This really shows the mindset of what's happening on Dragonstone more so than anything we've seen so far. Yes, we've seen the rituals, we've seen this and that, but we see right now how much Stannis is just sitting aside and almost daydreaming in a sense. He's stuck in his own head. He wants this prophecy to be filled out. And what's funny about this, and I'm going to segue because this is awesome, his prophecy of being Azor Ahai. Uh, well, we have the history of Aegon the Conqueror and his conquest of Westeros, like you said, that Shireen is teaching Davos how to read. Cut straight to Dany, which I think Dany is the Conqueror. I don't think she is a super savior. I think she's a great character, uh, but she's definitely relates to me as Aegon the Conqueror. He was strong, stern. You can't really say how great his character was. He did burn people alive or execute them unless they bent a knee, and that's mainly what we see with Dany. I believe she's gonna have to give a slight bit of leeway with this, especially if she wants allegiance from the north. But in this scene, we see Jorah getting really sassy with getting really sassy with Barristan and telling him, "Well, you're just an exiled knight now. You're not even a king's guard anymore." Uh, he's trying. They're going back and forth on what's the best advice, and Dany's just leading her Khalasar wherever they can at this point. And we do get to meet Grey Worm, which I think is pretty cool. they all get to decide their own names at this point. We learn a little bit more about the Unsullied, how they're given names. It's just awful. And I think we're technically in Slaver's Bay. I don't know exactly. I think it's north
I
of
think
Astapor,
I
and
think
they're
they're
going to Yunkai.
probably in the middle of Astapor and Yunkai, somewhere in that weird um, area where it's undefined. I think it was probably in the title sequence, but I don't remember.
And they bring up the Greyjoy Rebellion again. Could this
Mm-hmm.
go into Euron, right? That we're gonna have, because Jorah tells Barristan how he was the second person through the breach at
Mm-hmm.
the Greyjoy Rebellion, and that this may come to pass again for Jorah. This may be how he dies, defending Dany from Euron, because I think Euron's going to play a big role. I feel like they should have built him up more, but they have an opportunity to make him the bad he needs to be. Uh, uh, Cersei is almost at this point. You can almost empathize with her. Um, and yeah, she's a great bad,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we'll see something a little more there. I think there's a lot of talk of the Greyjoy Rebellion, like hints here and there, a sentence here or two there about it. So I think that's a really great point. And, you know, Thoros Amir with his flaming sword. We're going to have someone else with a flaming sword charging Euron. That may be a good question to ask. But I'll let you talk now. It's your show.
No, I feel when we get this Danny scene, it's kind of more focused actually on Jorah and Barristan and how these two men who have known each other get to kind of relive and kind of know more about one another. Like they kind of know bits and pieces, but they don't know exactly. And Jorah tries to be sassy because he has to protect his Khaleesi from anybody, even though it is Barristan Selmy. Um, and their dynamic is ever growing and ever changing, and it's really funny. And when Danny, we get introduced, when Danny slash we all get introduced to Grey Worm, it's really, I guess, a point where we now know somebody within the Unsullied, so we don't have to say Unsullied number one, Unsullied number two, and yada 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 when they're introduced on screen. And it's kind of cute because Missandei is the one who talks about their names and all of this stuff. And we obviously know Grey Worm and Missandei's relationship later on down in these seasons and how they really evolve and change. But it's really cool. And the one thing I forgot to mention though, when talking about Barristan and Jorah and that relationship, is that there's that contention of Jorah's reputation may not be the best when going to Westeros, and when they go home is more of that dialogue. So there may be contention in the North because of who Mormont was and all of that. I don't know if it'll be like this thing that will last and span episodes, but I feel like when he first arrives with Danny, there may be just a little bit extra conflict because of who Jorah is and who Danny is when they arrive in the North.
Lyanna might want his head from the King of the North, considering the disgrace he brought upon their family and basically kind of almost their house ruin. You know, it's been a minute since there's a male heir. You don't need a male heir to Bear Island, but he left them in a very hard way. Luckily, you had some strong women to pick it up and carry the torch, like bosses. I mean, Lyanna Mormont. Oh yeah, gotta
Yeah,
love her.
yeah.
I do think at the bare minimum, she's gonna have a little bit of something to say to him, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I found that bit of dialogue interesting. I was like, whew, yeah, that will be something that will probably be brought up. And who knows, Jorah may have that weird thing of remembering, even if he doesn't believe it in this moment. So that's that um, Danny scene. If you have any more thoughts on that, if not, I think we're at the final scene for this episode, which kind of is a semi namesake for um, this, which is John and the wildlings, but especially John and Egret. So, um, if you want to talk about that, unless you have any more thoughts on Danny, Jorah, Barristan, Missandei, Grey Worm.
No, no, that's a good point. There's uh, a lot there for just, that was a scene basically for Jorah and Barristan. It was a little bit of Danny. We got Grey Worm becoming basically the commander of the Unsullied or captain, and I think it's pretty good. Leave it there. Um, we go beyond the wall, and they're basically scouting the wall to see. Um, the scouts are coming back, telling them who's walking the wall. They're asking John a bunch of questions about how many people live there. Uh, Aurel doesn't, believe him. John does lie. I think he said, there's 1,000 men on the wall. Tormund, just isn't really having it too much. He's like, if you're lying, well, then I'll just kill you. I'm not gonna worry about it. If you lie to me, I'll kill you. And I don't know how much he's testing John at this point yet, but you can see it seems like Egret knows that John's lying. It's good how he acts here because he looks down a lot when he's lying. He has the liar's face when he's acting, which is very hard to portray. So yeah, I like I like that. And then we get the whole cave scene, which when you go back to it, it's pretty touching, especially knowing what happens in the future episodes. This is where John becomes a man, so to speak, or loses his virginity, and I guess it can happen in a much more romantic way. Didn't you say something about them jumping in the water?
Oh, so during the filming of season 3, I think this was after, I think he might have been filming a movie when it happened, or it might have just been his own uh, funny ways of doing things. But John's ankle is actually like broken during majority of these scenes. So when they have their intimate moment and stuff, that's still Kit Harington. But when they're in the water, um, later on, the person that jumps in the water is actually his stunt actor, um, which is kind of funny. So he had a stunt actor on his own sex scene with his future wife, might I add. And there's a funny article that's come out about John's relationships, so to speak, and it's that the only person that's ever made John happy is actually Egret, and that he'll probably never be happy again, whether that is in reference to Danny and his relationship, or just simply because of the fact that of what this relationship on this show really did for his character is yet to really be seen. But I feel like it's a sweet scene for these two, especially now that we know that they fell in love on the show and got married. Yeah, just sweet, sweet scene that happens. But the way that she gets him to get there is funny, um, and especially after she talks about how many lovers she has had compared to his
Yeah,
none.
John don't want to hear that shit. Just stop. Just stop it. You don't need to listen. It's fine. I don't want to have that mental picture. John was right in that. I don't want to know. Just shut up and kiss me. That's all he wanted to do. He's in the moment here. He's taking life, grabbing it by the horns, and he's living life to the fullest at this moment. All other cliches, whatever. So I think it was a really good scene. John and Egret opening up to one another and finally taking a bath. I mean, shit, it's about time at this point. you know they got to be sweaty and ready. So yeah, they talk about not having to leave that cave. That's kind of where we almost leave it there. And
Yeah, we
Ollie,
yeah. Yeah, we leave their scene with talking about not leaving the cave and how much in future episodes that means to their relationship. Um, Up until pretty much the moment she dies, she talks about that moment where it was just the two of them, and yeah, it's a touching scene because hey, Jon Snow's character has waited kind of a long time to do what he needs to do in that department. And yeah, you get two really not tumultuous, but you get two relationships with the older Stark um, boys, and it's sweet how they both kind of were they developed because of where they were at that right time and that right moment. Um, yeah, it's
yeah,
everything.
it's funny because John is using love to get him through this situation, whereas Rob is more letting love control him through this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even really think about that till you said that. Good point. Well, it was a good episode.
It is a really good episode. And now we've come to the end. So, yeah, we've gotten to the end. We've gone through all of the scenes. It's a very, in the beginning, it shows the whole kissed by fire element, but it's a good episode overall. What would you rate this episode? And final thoughts for this?
My final thoughts was this was a really good episode. I would say I would rate this at least a mm, at least 9 Tormund testicles. So that I think that would be a proper rating. We had the Beric Dondarrion versus the Hound, plus you had the Queen of Thorns battling Tyrion, Tywin, and Cersei, all with one arm tied behind her back. And don't forget Arya's personal struggle. We had a lot of things happen in this, especially in King's Landing. And the Game of Thrones was played to a T here. And it's just like watching a train wreck. You just can't look away, man. It's I really enjoyed this episode. And I won't be redundant. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I I too would give this episode 9. I was
Don't
thinking
copy
about
me.
this. No, I thinking 9 before you said it. I would probably give this 9 Elena Fig bites. And
9 on the regulars.
yeah, 9 on the regulars. And this episode, it's for a lot of characters, it's a an evolution episode where we're at the midpoint of the season and they're really they're being tested in more ways than one on a lot of things. And Rob's really had the biggest test of a lot of this season slash of his storyline, and same with John, where he's was tested and he kind of passed slash failed depending on how you look at it. And even Baelish with his scheming and plotting, and Tywin with saying this is what we're going to do, and if you don't like it, it doesn't matter, so shut up and sit down. Like it's a lot of things coming together. And also Danny getting to meet someone who is very important for her in terms of being able to connect to the people who she's now freed but are not part of her army. It's a good episode. I enjoyed it very much, and we're now halfway through season 3, and I can't wait to talk about the next one, which is episode 6, The Climb. So it's the episode where Mel meets Gendry and Arya and the they climb the wall. The crew that's beyond the wall climbs the wall. Um, if you want to say, Johnny, where everybody can find you, even though they probably know this already, where they can find you, and if you have anything coming up.
Well, I'll just say you can find me in the descriptions. I do Fire and Blood every week. I'll be on Geek Chat One's channel. I'll also be on Mackenzie Burns' channel. And I'll also be on the Cylon John's channel as well. And next week, tomorrow we get the trailer, so we'll be talking about that this week for sure as well.
Mm-hmm.
So tune back in here. We'll also be doing the other episode, so you'll see me everywhere. And usually Kenzie's head is by my head. We're both co-hosting all the time. We just have a good time. It's very fun. I thank everyone for watching, and thank you so much, Mackenzie, for having me on.
No problem at all. Johnny, it's a pleasure talking to you about these episodes of Game of Thrones, because especially going from the beginning, because we already know where the story goes. Because we already know where the story goes, it's fun to see how it plays out from the beginning. I want to just thank you again, and hopefully this format works out and it continues to do this. We will be doing more of these podcasty style premiere types of episodes for the episode that we don't do live on Wednesday nights. We'll try to do more of the more simple episodes during these points in time to catch up because we're running out of time. But we're going to get it all done for you all because it's important. And with that, the next episode we'll be doing is The Climb, and I believe Wednesday we should be doing Baron the Maiden Fair, which is episode 7. And with that, we'll see you all in the next one. Bye. The word.